What is up, guys? So this is the thinking self-abstraction trinity. So like I explained, the trinity is not the totalitarian unity, not the two conflicting, and not the four quadrant. So the middle has to be some kind of trinity. Now they didn't talk about the self in my feeling, self-abstraction trinity. Now the self is more like, okay, our conceptualization on our own self within realms of the bottom, middle, top, and now it relates to, the I of thinking, the I of feeling, D of feeling, D of thinking, and now that manifests in some words. So yeah, I made the distinction between the words with feeling and now with the thinking one. So I associate psychology with the feeling and philosophy with the thinking, even though they go between realms, but still I try to isolate it in our realms to explain further and leverage further, so we can have a better understanding, better isolation to know what we talk about. I kind of do a vocabulary that people oftentimes don't do to encounter more truth about life or discover some things that can help us kind of arrange things in a more orderly fashion so we can know what we talk about. So yeah. So philosophy is more love of wisdom. Philo means love. And Sophia is philosophia. Sophia means wisdom. So our psychology was more psyche and logos, which is more mind, soul, spirit, with a discourse, which is logos, or logic, or reason. Philosophy is more loving wisdom, trying to unlearn in a way, even though philosophy can be seen as something to learn, and even more. It's actually an unlearning process, a cleaning process, and also a discovering process through the logos, we can see. So yeah, so there's epistemology, metaphysics, ontology, cosmology, ethics, logic, and aesthetics. There's a lot of branches within philosophy, so it's a pretty large subject. I mean, like psychology, but it's more that I try to narrow down the self parts of that kind of thinking trinity that I represent with philosophy. But there's still a lot of branches, so a lot more to consider and to account. But yeah, epistemology is more like how do we know? How do we know something? Trying to construct theory of knowledge, how we know stuff. Metaphysics is what is beyond the physical, trying to reflect about that. Okay. Ontology is more like structure of being. It's a little bit more what I'm trying to do actually with my trinity. The self is more, ontology is more questions about the self, about our own being, something like that. Or words that can encapsulate a version of reality about us, something like that. And cosmology is more reflecting about the universe, the cosmos. And ethics and logic is more like that. Kind of feeling, moral, or reason, critical thinking, kind of fashion, logic, deduction, induction logic. And aesthetics is more like beauty, encountering beauty, more the physical kind of realm of the truth with beauty, and also the good, which is good, which is bad in some sense. So yeah, it's a summary, you can say. So yeah, the intellect, like the psyche in my sense, more like a memory, and like a lot of processes. It's more mechanistic, a lot of operations, and it's like the person who accumulate memories, facts over time, or principle actually, which is more what the psyche and the intellect does, and it's more the level at the bottom or art. So it's more intellectual and ritualistic. Kind of have that representation that is more a ritualistic process that is working on memory and kind of isolate what it knows to kind of progress in life, etc. So it's more reality and seeing. Even though you cannot measure the intellect and say, okay, I can see it and stuff like that, but it's still a process. The process in itself is seen and in reality, more the process of the logos, a little bit more like the soul. It's more poetic, it's more the middle, it's more the reality and the abstract, and it's more a discovery process, you know. So it's more that dance of the poetic, trying to discover. But that's why it's more a discourse or a dialogos, and that's why it's in the middle in my sense, like the soul that is discovered and poetic within a discourse, you know, with the reality and the abstract, because it's in the middle. So yeah, so it's more about the reason, you know, like I said, the dialogue, trying to find a middle ground to search for the transcendent, which reason, it's more a transcendental reason, kind of. So it still have that kind of abstraction, but it still operate within the reality of the dialogue. And yeah, I wasn't sure if I would name it the cosmos, and it's referred a lot to Jesus. You know, Jesus is often equated to logos, and in a sense, it's more because he's the middle of the trinity. You can say that he encountered the reality and the abstract, and it kind of transcend reason. And the logos, in a way, is how we enter the world or enter conscious awareness, because you cannot you know, be outside of the logos in a way, because that's how human will operate. So you cannot be outside of that human conscious awareness, because you're a human, and you will always operate in that kingdom, you know, that kind of kingdom of the human mind, you can say, like more the human mind. So yeah, it's more the intelligibility aspect. What is intelligible to us, we can reason. It can go pretty abstractly, you know, because it's in the middle, so it does both. But it's still within the intelligibility of the cosmos, you know, what is understandable. And we push the logos to kind of encounter it and to progress it, but it's still determined in some fashion. So yeah, how we enter human conscious awareness. And you know, that's why a lot of religious people also say that Jesus is the logos and all that, because they're kind of synonymous in that fashion, that we encounter the world and our human consciousness, and that transcendent aspect will be represented as a human, you can say, between the abstract and the reality, and being at the same time a human, but God in a way. So yeah. So mind is more an abstraction of thinking. It's more the higher, in my sense, more the heaven and the top. It's more the spiritual. It's more like the spiritual. I mean the spirit of the feeling, self-abstraction, trinity. Even though, in my sense, you know, the spiritual of the feeling is actually the top, or you can say that the thinking of that trinity is being logos, and it's the one of my trinity, you know, which is the logos here. So you can say that so the feeling self-abstraction trinity as the top, and the thinking self-abstraction trinity as the middle, and the bottom I've not decided yet. I don't put anything actually. I just put intellectual and ritualistic, which, you know, intellectual is pretty much intellect is pretty much intellectual, and ritualistic is pretty much the psyche. So we can see that both are at the bottom. But in the mind, it's more an awareness, unconscious idea. It's more like an idea that is felt. The mind is more an idea that is felt, but it's kind of unseen. And we oftentimes say mind for something that is more collective, because it's at the top, it has more a collective kind of encapsulation. You know? So it's a little bit more like the nous, like a higher awareness that encapsulate a lot of minds, you can say. So like in Plotinus, you know, the Plato, like a guy, a Neoplatonist, is talking about the kind of aspect of reality from the bottom, from the top. A little bit what I'm doing, but him in this kind of realm, you can see that is the nous. It is more about the mind, collective intelligence. In my sense, more that you kind of travel with the mind, and that kind of aspect of mind will inevitably be about a collective intelligence of some kind at some point, because that's the abstraction of your mind, and the abstraction of your mind will have something collective to it of the human awareness, you can say. Like I said here. And yeah, collective intelligence. So it has more that kind of aspect to it. Like the spirit. But I think the spirit is more isolated for some reason. I think that with the feeling, it's more isolated in a memory, while the mind, it will actually be more about a collective intelligence. So it's funny how the different trinity, depending on thinking or feeling, we have a different kind of aspect to them. So yeah, I find it pretty interesting. That's my reflection. With reading stuff, processing, kind of trying to make the distinction and relate it to my theories and all that. That's what seems to be the case on some fashion. But yeah. So thanks for watching. It was the Thinking Self-Attraction Trinity.